Hey everybody, welcome back to the weekly Weed Watch. So this week what we're going to do is we're going to switch over and start looking at some summer annuals, some of our early emerging summer annuals. Well, in the past we've been talking a lot about winter annuals as well as some cool season perennials. Most of those have either been burned down or will be burned down pretty soon, and on those fields that have been opened up, we are seeing some of those early emerging summer annuals starting to come up. And so today what I want to do is highlight one of those summer annuals that is one of the first emergers for us and has been, I've seen a few of them coming up in the last couple of weeks. So let's go check it out. Okay, everybody, so our weekly weed is giant ragweed, which we have several of here in the frame. You also will see a few common ragweeds there as well. But today what I want to focus in on is giant ragweed, okay? As I had mentioned, this is one of the first summer annuals to start emerging for us in the spring. Most of these started emerging about 2 weeks ago, and we will continue to see them emerge over the next several weeks. But it is one of the first plants, our first summer annual weeds to start emerging for us here in Kentucky. Just some quick identification. So we'll focus in on here some of the bigger plants here. The first thing is you can, if you look at the cotyledons, those big, round, they're pretty fleshy, kind of spoon-like cotyledons, pretty distinct of giant ragweed, and they are very large. You know, they're as big as my fingertip there, whereas there's not a lot of other weeds that have that big of a cotyledon. So those big, massive spoon-like cotyledons are usually a pretty big giveaway. And then the first initial leaves are going to be these typically just be a serrated single leaf. They don't have the deep serrations that we typically think of for giant ragweed, and that's usually what we get for the first couple of leaves. And then in the upper leaves, you start getting that typical look of the highly segmented three segments, or kind of a trident type of look for those upper leaves. Although we do have some biotypes like this one right here, where they continue just to have those serrated leaves. They don't have that deep serration or those kind of three segmented leaves, or even up to 5 segments, but just continue with those entire leaves but segmented around the side. So it just kind of depends on the biotype, but all around a weed that's pretty easy to identify. It's pretty distinguishable amongst many of the others. So as far as talking about control goes, with these weeds, what I like to focus on is not what should we spray, but when should we spray. Okay, so it's all about the timing. And with giant ragweed, like all of our weeds, the earlier the better. So we really need to be getting to them when they're 4 to 6 inches tall. That's when we can get the best control of these weeds. And the problem with giant ragweed is it grows very rapidly. Again, these plants up here probably came up 2 to 3 weeks ago, and they're already up to 3 inches tall. So they're already at the stage where we really seriously need to start thinking about making some type of application to control them. And the reason why giant ragweed grows so fast is it's a competitor for sunlight. Okay, so if you've ever driven by a cornfield in mid to late summer, if it has an infestation of giant ragweed, that giant ragweed is, 8, 9, 10 foot tall, just depending on the corn hybrid. Basically, it's 2 foot taller than whatever corn hybrid is in that field, right? Whereas if you have a soybean field right next door that has again, a giant ragweed infestation, the giant ragweed's not going to be nearly as tall because the soybeans aren't as tall. It only gets about 1 foot or 2 taller than whatever it's competing with. And so in scenarios like this, where it's actually right next to one of our wheat plots, its goal is to get up to 1 foot or 2 taller than that wheat. And if we give this a couple of weeks, it'll get there pretty quickly. Even though our wheat's been emerged and in the ground and growing for much longer, this weed will grow very rapidly to get there. So that's the problem with giant ragweed, is it will grow very rapidly, and it grows upward very rapidly. So we have to get to it sooner than later. And so a lot of times, if we're waiting on all the other weed species to get to that 2 to 4 inches, by that time, this giant ragweed is probably going to be 1 foot tall by that time. So a lot of times we need to make giant ragweed our driver rather than some of our other weeds for those early applications. So that is our weekly weed. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.